The newest version of the Gear series is a bit bigger, packs a little more punch, and brings a few more tools for the smartwatch enthusiast. Is there enough substance behind the style? We find out in this full review of the Samsung Gear S3. While it might not be easy for everyone to sport this large smartwatch, there is one simple reality for those who can. This is one sleek device. The Gear S3 Frontier brings grooves to the signature rotating bezel, giving it an added tactile quality that is subtle but noticeably felt. Seconds and increments of 5 line the area just below the rotating bezel, a small detail that adds to any analog watch face. 2 buttons are on the right side, one to go backwards in the interface and the other to either go back to the watch face or open up the app list. To differentiate the Frontier and Classic editions, the Frontier's buttons are more recessed to the body and are covered in a patterned leather. In adding to the sporty nature of the Gear S3 Frontier, a silicone band comes standard. This helps with the watch's water resistance, ensuring that no leather will get ruined if one's wrist gets splashed. However, it is easy to replace the bands through the 22mm standard connectors. A myriad of bands are available from Samsung via partnerships with plenty of fashion companies, but this silicone complemented the style of the Gear S3 nicely. And the display is half the story regarding the size of the Gear S3. At 1.3 inches, the OLED display is covered in Gorilla Glass SR+, Scratch Resistance Plus, and boasts 360 by 360 resolution. Though these specs might sound a bit run-of-the-mill for most high-end smartwatches, credit goes to Samsung for leveraging it as effectively as possible. OLED lends to really great colors coming from the Tizen OS along with the ability to truly turn off the display's lighting for battery savings. And to that end, watch faces on the Gear S3 take on a different nature when the always-on display option is ticked. When using pretty much any watch face downloaded from the Samsung Gear application, covering the display with one's hand or letting it time out reveals a more toned-down version of the face that still keeps the essential elements in view no matter what angle you're looking at the watch from. For any fans of the always-on display on the Galaxy smartphones, this is about the closest that it can get strapped onto a wrist. So, for a watch that wants to do as much as possible, there has to be quite a bit of power under the hood. For the Gear S3, this comes in the form of an Exynos 7270, born and optimized by Samsung and for Samsung, in the case of their own smartwatch operating system Tizen. It comes at no surprise, then, that the watch simply flies through its operating system and applications. A quick spin of the rotating bezel shows how fluidly all of the widgets and screens zip past with no issues at all. The only problems we had with applications came from third-party developed downloads from the Gear Manager. This is not so much the problem of the watch and its processing power, but from the development of the apps. While this is an issue that bears mentioning, the core experience of the Gear S3 is still about as good as it can get, and that says a lot, because this watch tries to do a lot out of the box. As mentioned earlier, we have been able to use a 4G LTE-enabled version of the Gear S3 that comes with a few extra. Namely, the ability to sync up the watch without needing to be around the smartphone it pairs with. Setting up the Gear Manager properly means that as long as both the smartphone and smartwatch are connected to some sort of network, notifications will come to the Gear S3, no matter where the user is. The added benefit is the ability to make calls and send texts in this very situation, without the smartphone around. On AT&T, this service is called Number Sync and it makes it so that the watch goes off alongside its paired phone. Calls on the watch make use of a speaker and microphone combo that is found on the left side of the body, tucked under the top half of the watch. The experience of taking calls on the S3 is akin to a small walkie-talkie that is strapped to your wrist, but it isn't effective in even semi-loud environments and thus requires either a Bluetooth headset connection or, surprise surprise, moving to the phone. It's a great idea made into reality, it's just not as awesome as we probably all expected it to be. And lastly, Tizen, the smartwatch OS of choice for Samsung. Since the Gear S2, there have been some enhancements made to the operating system, and existing Gear S2 users will get this through an update. These are mostly in terms of using the rotating bezel, which can be rotated to answer or decline calls, for example. The main noticeable changes are in the overall optimization of the Tizen software, and it shows in the smooth look and feel that the Gear S3 provides. Which is good, because there are a lot of apps that require some due diligence. Weather, calendar events, reminders, Flipboard, S-Health, and so much more are available to the user, and it can get a little overwhelming. Add upon all the different ways that users can respond to messages, voice, emoji, canned messages, and a T9 keyboard that is a bit easier to use on the larger screen but is still far from ideal. There was a feeling I couldn't shake when using the Gear S3. With every notification that came in, I found myself enjoying reading the entire message, usually SMS, on the screen, scrolling down with the satisfying clicks of the rotating bezel. This is an experience I had before on the Gear S2, but for some reason this was better on the even larger, more men's fashion-oriented Gear S3. And for any faults that I came across in this smartwatch, like buggy apps or tough-to-hear voice calls blaring from my wrist, the simplest daily activities were made better by what Samsung continues to build upon since premiering their unique tactile user experience. The Gear S3 Frontier, in particular, really tries to wear a lot of hats at once: smartwatch, notification center, health monitor, payment system, GPS tracker, audio player, and voice caller, to name a few. And though there are a large number of users that may be turned off by the visage of this smartwatch, credit has to be given where credit is due. Samsung managed to make the bulk of these features work well enough in concert to make what has been one of the most enjoyable smartwatch experiences we've had in a little while. Android Wear unfortunately has one of its biggest competitors in the Samsung Gear S3.